It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. Alia Shawkat just made a really interesting movie. Of course, you probably know her best for her role as Maeby Fünke on the show Arrested Development. She also stars in Search Party on TBS. She's always funny, confident. She's vulnerable when she has to be, but there's this new movie. It's called Duck Butter. It's available right now to buy or rent. It's basically the story of a romantic relationship on fast forward. Not like a romance story that condenses 2 years into 90 minutes, first kiss and all. It's a deeply committed, engaged, and loving relationship that lasts, in the film's time, 24 hours. Here's the premise. Alia plays Naima, who one night at a club meets Sergio, played by Laia Costa. Right away, they're both smitten. They kiss in the club, they hook up at home, and after that, they decide to spend the next 24 hours together, awake and totally present, to get all the relationship stuff over with, the sex, the fights, the ups and downs. And they learn about each other. Naima is reserved and clever. Sergio is frank and a little dramatic. Together, the two make for a movie that's modest, intimate, and really sweet. I do want to mention that if you're wondering over the course of this interview why we don't talk about the Arrested Development cast group interview that the New York Times did a couple of weeks ago, it's because I conducted this interview before that interview was released. Anyway, let's take a listen to a little bit from Alia's new movie, Duck Butter. This is from the beginning of the film. Naima and Sergio just met. In this moment, the two make a plan to spend the next day together.
You know these kind of couples that they spend like 10 years together and then they get married? They divorce in 1 year.
Right.
So just get married right away.
Yeah, do everything you want the second you want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why
and you
would
just get like nervous thinking about it before you
Exactly. Just go and have fun with the things you have right there.
do it. Yeah, like this. This whole night we should do this for like 24 hours straight.
Like you and me?
Yeah. Eating chips, drinking juice,
Yeah.
having sex.
What are you doing?
Now?
I want to know you for real.
You got 4 hours out of me so far.
I want 24 hours.
Alia Shawkat, welcome to Bullseye. It's great to have you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
This is a bold premise for a film. I think 24 hours of dating is pretty bold. Folding the sex into it really doubles down on boldness. Between you and Miguel Arteta, who co-wrote the movie with you and directs it, where did this idea come up?
We have known each other for a while now. I want to say like almost 10 years. But he approached me and was like, I want to write with you. I want to write something. And I was very flattered. And we kind of just sat down and started talking about different ideas. And we soon discovered that we both wanted to make a movie about love and why it hurts so much. More really like the idea of love. When you project on someone and even when you know someone's not right for you, you still are like, but then why do I miss them so much? Or why do I kind of wish I could make it work even though I know this is like very toxic? So we just started sharing stories of toxic relationships we've been in that we can't really let go of and we still think about. And it kind of started from there. It took 5 years of lots of conversation because we'd both be working and leave town a lot, and then we'd Skype, and the script went through many different forms, but yeah, that's kind of how it started.
I imagine that neither one of you were in this weird high-concept dating situation, but were in the situation where you were in relationships and trying to force love into and onto them?
Sure. Yeah. It was a combination of, Sergio was an amalgamation of people we had been drawn to before, a version of it. People who are mystifying and have this kind of confidence where they don't question themselves and inspire others at first. And then, the more you get to know them, kind of seeing that they're actually very damaged. And not that they're not lovable, but that it might be too much for you to be able to handle. And then also, Naima's struggles of convincing yourself you're open and ready for this, and then not being able to continuously be honest, being like, I'm fine, I'm totally fine. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I definitely relate to that. And that was a big sore spot, if you will, that I needed to make a movie out of, to hopefully exercise out of myself.
Do you want to tell me about how it reflected itself in your life?
You mean previously?
Yeah.
Yeah, just, being with people and wanting to be all in, vulnerable and all these things. And then the minute there's more truth to it, of actually getting to know each other, actually being vulnerable and what that means, I found it very challenging. I would just kind of clam up and be like, maybe we're just friends, or, get drawn to people who are unavailable, basic psychology. I like to think, any advice I have is like make art about your biggest insecurities, because it does help. I'm still working on it, but it definitely helped a lot to kind of see it from a, fourth perspective almost, and just be like, whoa, I totally remember doing that, and why that's not fair to other people, and just like to take your time more instead of rushing into something.
How did this movie come to be about two women's romance rather than a man and a woman as it had originally been written?
It was casting and then the evolution of the writing, and those happening simultaneously. We were having troubles with the outline in the way that we were still working on it, but we were kind of getting stuck up against a wall about imagining it happening with a guy, from literally just showing the sex to the actual physical, can a guy actually come that many times?
I feel like when I was watching the movie, which has every kind of sex scene in it, like emotionally and tonally, like happy sex, sexy sex, like first time sex, 75th time sex.
Yeah.
Because that's the idea of this relationship, is that they're trying to encompass a full relationship into this 24 hours.
Totally.
I thought, like, if I was watching this much sex in a movie between a man and a woman, I feel like it would feel very different. Like, there's no way to look at that without the baggage and the context of, 100 years of misogyny in film and America.
Yeah.
More than 100 years in America, right?
Right.
And like it would just feel dramatically different, leaving aside the like biological, can a dude have that many sex in that time?
Yeah. But also the gender roles is what we were also able to solve. Is like, we had written this story about two people, and we're really kind of gender blind to it. But because, that's how we had seen, just like thought of it, we're like, right, it's a story about a guy and a girl, Jack and Jill, like this is the story. But we really didn't want it to be about like men and women are different, and like people projecting their gender specific roles onto people. So when we cast Laia, that was another huge part of the story that got solved. We were like, it's even better. It clarifies how different these two people are without distracting people about these gender identities that we have. And like, women are crazy and guys are distant, and it's like all these things that had nothing to do with the story. And, once we changed it to Laia and kind of understood exactly what the story was going to be, it was also important to me not to add the fact that, we were lesbians and not addressing that too much. And I was like, it's a very important story, the coming out story, or the challenges of the outside world when people are gay. But for me, I wanted to tell this very insular story where it's not like, so when did you realize that you were gay? It's like, no, we're just together. And
when they're in a social context, they're in a gay social context.
A gay social context, exactly.
Where no one has to explain to each other, they are hegemonic in the, in the gay bar that they're in. Everybody there is a lesbian and it's not a big deal, which is the whole idea. Yeah,
totally. It's not a big deal. And that, I read an article that a woman wrote about Duck Butter that was saying, like, she was challenging the facts whether it was a queer movie or not because it's not politicized. And obviously, she's allowed to have her opinion, but I was like, it is important to me that eventually we have stories where that's not the whole crux of it. There's not just one friend who's black and one friend who's gay. It's like, no, they're gay, they're black, they're Arab, whatever, and we don't have to reference it so much. And that's how it would become, I think, a little more, normalized. And also younger kids seem to really connect to this film, young college kids. And, because hopefully in the certain communities that, the younger generation, it's not weird for them. They're like, gay people weren't allowed to get married? And you're like, yeah, man, it was crazy. Like that's, hopefully the progression of things moving forward.
I want to ask you about your childhood.
Sure.
You grew up east of LA, like in the Palm Springs area?
Yeah.
What is it like to live there in a place where the public perception of that place is defined by vacationers and retirees?
It's a very strange place to grow up in. I wouldn't change it for anything because now I love going back. But growing up, high school years was kind of rough. I mean, it was just like really boring. There's nothing really for the youth. It's slowly starting to grow, but
it's like some kind of desert there.
Yeah, it's a big ass desert. And in the summers, it's brutally hot, up to like 120 degrees. And it kind of turns into a ghost town over the summer. So it's this like hot, empty place where it's like a huge mall and it's like and like tumbleweeds. And you're like, I guess we'll just hide in the movie theater and watch 5 movies and skip around just to be in the air conditioning. Yeah, it was a very odd place, and especially because it was so close to LA. And because I started acting when I was young, I would be, me and my parents would be commuting back and forth to LA a lot. So I had this like comparison where I'm like, LA, the big city. And then I come back to like the small town. I was like, oh, this shit. But, it's very small and quaint. I went to a very small school, knew everyone in the whole class and the whole school. It's like there's no traffic. It's very slow paced. And you're around a lot of old people, which looking back on, I appreciate and kind of value. I think it kind of taught me this like weird inner pacing, if that makes sense. Like, other people, very few that I've met who grew up there, there's something where like, oh, we know, like desert rats, I call them or call us. But I think like there's a breed of special people that actually come from this place because it's very strange. It has a weird little history and also a very strange dichotomy of like super wealthy old people and then like everyone else who works for them, and then people who are barely getting by, kind of like meth head world too. It's like a very strange, and they're all living together because it's not that big. And then you drive out and there's like the Salton Sea, and then there's Joshua Tree. Like there's all these like strange, beautiful, odd nature places also nearby. So
the dinosaurs from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
The dinosaurs, yeah. The outlet malls. I mean, yeah. There's a lot of date shakes. Love the banana date shakes. My favorite. Yeah, so now I wouldn't trade it, for the world. But it was an odd little place. It was kind of like, specifics were different, but like a suburb where you're just like, can't wait to get out of this town. It was that kind of vibe.
You made a short documentary about your dad owning a strip club.
I did, yeah.
Did he own a strip club when you were little?
All my life, yeah. They owned one before. My parents met at the Body Shop on Sunset. My mom was a waitress and my dad was a barback. And they met, were friends for years, and then once they got, together, they said we're going to open up our own, but in Palm Springs, because my mom's father...
To be clear, the Body Shop, a strip club, not the Body Shop where you buy Satsuma lotions.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
It's like a famous place in LA, yeah. LA based, but yeah. Right on Sunset Boulevard, bright yellow. So they decided to open up their own place, and we're working hard and saving money. And my grandfather, my mother's father, was an actor in the 50s and 60s, and he had a weekend home there that he ended up retiring in. So they were like, "Oh, Palm Springs, this is like this good kind of smaller town. It's cheaper, not that far away." So they decided to open up their first business there. It was called the Pink Lady, and then my mom had me and my older brother. And then they moved something like 30 years ago to Showgirls, opened up as a bigger club, like a little shopping center. And yeah, so they've had it all my life. Yeah.
Let's take a listen to a little clip from the documentary, which is called Showgirl Sexuality. This is you in the club sitting across from your dad. And actually, you have not revealed in the documentary to this point.
Yeah, it's revealed kind of at the end, yeah.
The reverse dramatic irony or whatever it's called, that you're talking to your dad. You're just talking to the manager of the strip club.
Mm-hmm. What would you think if your daughter was a dancer?
You know, as a father, you know, you don't want your daughter to be dancing. I'm not putting anybody down, but I mean, if I don't feel comfortable about it, absolutely not.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. You only have one daughter, right?
Yep, and she's sitting in front of me.
Right. Okay.
It's your career, it's your life.
Thanks, Dad.
I can't even begin to. I mean, the whole situation. Obviously, if you're not in that, if you haven't grown up in that situation, it's hard, difficult to wrap your head around.
Mm-hmm.
But you sitting there and asking those questions, like, I can't imagine asking those questions of my dad. My dad's a nice man.
Yeah.
But I'm terrified of him. He's my dad.
You know, I was terrified of my dad when I was younger. We butted heads a lot. When I was like 16, discovered pot and was working. You know, so when I come home to the desert, as I said, there was like this like drip, you know, like this kind of fall in energy because I would be so active and working with like my close friends, working on a set, and then I'd have to come back to Palm Springs and do regular school. And I was like, well, I'm not getting any high from this, you know. So I was craving independence naturally, whatever. So I would get, you know, toasted. And my dad and I are very similar. And now we're very close, but at that time it was very challenging because I was like, well, I'm working. I think I deserve to go out late and smoke pot with my friends. And he was like, I don't think so. He's like, you're working hard, but you have to be a smart girl and stay home. And also you're a girl. You know, there was a line there as well. I have two brothers and they kind of had more freedom than I did. And I was like, this is bullshit. I work harder than they do. I should deserve freedom. And he was like, but it's not safe for you out there in the world. And I was like, bullshit. So it was very challenging for many years in the teens. But then as I got older and he saw that I was focused, we've become, you know, very, very close. Actually, the minute I turned 18, where I was legally independent, he completely pulled the reins back and was like, I support you. It's your life. Do what you want to.
So when you were a teenager, you were cast on Arrested Development.
Mm-hmm.
It took a while for Arrested Development to become anything like the phenomenon that it is today. Now, whatever it is, 15 or so years later.
Yeah, Jesus.
It must have been exciting just to be cast on a network television program. But at what point did you realize that you were in more than just a network television program?
You know, there's kind of two stages of it. Our first season, we won an Emmy for Best Comedy Show and Best Writing. And it was completely out of the blue. I mean, I remember me and Michael sitting there with the writers, and when they called our name, we were just like, what? And then we all had to run up together. It was very exhilarating, you know. And because I was young and hadn't experienced before, it was, you know, I'd been on another TV show, but this was only my second one. And you get nominated for an Emmy, and you get nominated for all these awards. And I was like, I guess that's what happens on TV shows. You just have to go to these awards. Little did I realize how big a, you know, system it all is. But anyway, so when we won, I was like, wow, we're part of something that everyone's going to watch now. You know, we had just come out with the first season, and, you know, I remember Michael and I got recognized once when the first season aired, and we were, like, blown away. They were like, you're on that show, Arrested Development, huh? And we were like, yeah, we are. And it was such a big deal. And then, yeah, we won the Emmy, and it was huge. And we went back to work, I remember, the next day on the Fox lot. And they have, like, free advertising on the outside, you know, those 3 big boards. And they had, like, the Pamela Anderson show about her being a librarian with the aptly named title, Stacked.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's counterintuitive because you wouldn't expect her to be a librarian.
No,
It's
you
just very
wouldn't.
funny.
Exactly. It's very funny. But her are huge. And so there's, like, that and,
I
like,
hadn't
2
noticed,
other...
frankly, but continue.
I'm a big fan of Pam's, actually.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's 2 other shows that you've never heard of, like, that haven't lasted, you know. And then you go inside, and you have to have a pass to get past the security guard. And when you turn the corner, there's a small little banner that only people who worked at Fox saw that said, congratulations, Arrested Development, on winning, like, 6 Emmys. And I remember that moment, and my mom kind of commented on it. She goes, why won't they give you guys the billboard? Because we never saw any advertising for the show. And she's like, that's such a bummer. She's like, it's like they just gave you, like, a little prom when you just, like, won the Super Bowl or whatever, you know. And so I thought I was a part of something bigger, and then it got chalked down again because I was like, no one's watching the show. We did 3 seasons, pretty much unnoticed to a degree. Awards and critics would like it, but I wasn't even aware of that stuff as much, or I didn't hold it up to a high tier. I wasn't like, this is important, we got nominated. I was like, I guess I got to find a dress again. It was like, it wasn't a big deal. And also nobody knew who we were. That was the thing. There was no awareness or interaction with fans of the show at the time.
Let's hear a clip from Arrested Development, on which my guest, Alia Shawkat, played Maeby Fünke, who was a somewhat scheming, somewhat precocious, slightly grumpy teenager who had parents who you could either call hands-off or negligent, depending on your perspective on things. And so at one point on the show, back when it was still on Fox, she gets a job as a studio executive, and she is still a middle teenager at this point. And the family doesn't even realize that she's gotten this job as a studio executive. And so this is her at home, and she's talking with her dad, Tobias, who's played by David Cross.
I haven't seen you in a week.
Oh, right. That means Mrs. Featherbottom isn't here, which means she didn't iron my blouse, which means I don't have anything to wear for my premiere. The premiere of Canada. He's going out with my gym teacher.
Maeby was actually referring to the premiere of a film from the studio where she had conned her way into a job.
Oh, hey, Jeff, did you ever get a chance to do that coverage on Voices in America, History and Perspective?
Yeah, I looked that up. It's a 9th grade history textbook.
Yeah, and if I don't get your report on it, I won't be able to pass on it. Because I have a feeling it's a piece of...
Unfortunately, the job was wreaking havoc with her language.
Maybe we just need a new housekeeper.
Oh my God, my voice is so high.
There's a new season of Arrested Development just around the corner. Is it odd to go back to your old high school, basically?
Yes. It was weirder the first time we came back after the 10-year break, the first time we did it for Netflix, because it was like I hadn't seen them since I was a proper teenager and had experienced a lot of things, travel and sex and drugs. And I felt like I wanted to show how mature I got, but I still obviously wasn't mature because I was like, I got to show them that I'm like an adult now. And because when I was younger, I was so insecure. I had such a good time on the show. Like me and Michael were best friends and we would do schooling and stuff, but I always felt like I'm the least funny one in the group, And I was always writing in my journal, they hate me on the show. It was I was very dramatic inside. Even though I was having fun, it was just being 15 and moody.
Was it odd to have a relationship with actors on the show who had seen you? I mean, in an ideal situation, maybe they served as mentors. I don't know.
Yeah.
But who essentially were, there was nobody besides Michael Cera who was even young enough to be like your big brother or big sister. It was people who could be your parents.
Yeah.
And to go back to them as a peer?
Yeah. No, it's very odd. It still is. I still feel myself when I'm around them acting like a kid. Me and Michael have remained very close throughout the whole time. So that was never weird. And I'm so thankful that we got to share it together. But they were definitely mentors in a way that it wasn't like they sat us down or something you should learn about comedy. It's we were just hanging out with them a lot and doing scenes with them that we might not even have understood what the scene was. And then seeing the way they do it, we're like, oh, that's funny. It really taught and shaped our sense of humor and sensibility and the way we read a script. And, it's priceless. It's unbelievable what we were able to learn so much at that age. It definitely is a family dynamic, to a degree, obviously. But we've known each other, this whole cast, for so long. Especially the way they knew Michael and I. We were so little, 14 and 15 when we started it, or even younger, 13, 14. So there's a very, parenting kind of thing of, I remember coming back this season and Jessica and Jeffrey being like, I am so proud of you. Have you seen the show? Have you seen Search Party? It's unbelievable. Did you read what the New York Times review said? Did you read it? To everybody. And I was like, all right. They're really like my grandparents. So
if your grandparents were on Flipper.
Yeah, exactly. But So yeah, they're very, it's very supportive. We really do all know each other, and again, I don't really hang out with a lot of them outside of the shooting, but we've seen each other at events and stuff. Besides Michael and David, I've seen a lot more. But there is this thing of just like it also propelled, if you will, all of our careers, even though people had had careers before that, but it was such a big piece of all of our work. And I think in a way we all like experienced how the world reacted to it and came back and we're like, can you believe it? That thing we made so long ago, now people care and love it. And we've all experienced such positive things because of it. That's got us other jobs, to meet people, all these experiences. And then when we got back together, we were able to kind of look at each other and be like, it's really cool. We're in this like group together.
Alia Shawkat, thanks so much for taking the time to come and be on Bullseye. It was great to have you on the show.
Yeah, it was great to be here. Thank you.
Alia Shawkat, everyone. Duck Butter is a fascinating movie recommended by me. You can buy or rent it from pretty much any online platform. Starting July 1st, you can stream it on Netflix too. Check it out. Oh, and we didn't get to talk about it in the interview, but did you know that her first movie role was in the movie Three Kings, the late 90s David O. Russell Gulf War movie with Ice Cube and George Clooney? She plays an Iraqi refugee, but you didn't know that. Pretty good first movie, I think.